gamers. So we have not done a tier list video in a while. The reason for that, honestly, is this format is pretty tough to crack. There's just so many viable decks. Honestly, it's such a varied format that it was kind of hard for me to gauge the different power levels. Now, we're about 1 week away from the end of the season and 2 weeks away from the Kashtira support, allegedly. So I think this is actually a pretty good time if you guys wanted to just, like, you know, speed run that Master 1 rank to get all the gems before the season ends, or if you know you want to actually speed run the ranks before the Kashtira support drops and the game is ruined, this video might be kind of useful for you. So we're going to get into this tier list. Now, of course, we need to have our boy, the based, crystal-based Neshi over here at the top. I think it goes without saying that Neshi absolutely deserves the top spot on this list. And now we can get into, you know, the bottom feeders. So one of the biggest decks that you need to watch out for right now is Purrely. Even without the Noir, like the baby Noir, this is still a super crazy deck. I mean, the tower setting up on turn 1 is really hard to out if you don't just like draw the out for a lot of decks. So it's a really powerful card. Otherwise, you kind of have to just bait out its bounces, and oftentimes if they're patient, they can just kind of hold their materials and wait, and you won't have any way to deal with it if you don't have the out, right? Not to mention that, you know, you get to draw 6 on your opponent's turn, which is absolutely insane. You can set up a Lyrilusk so that you don't take any battle damage, so that way you're pretty much guaranteed not to die on turn 2. The deck is just really solid. Going second, it has an easy OTK with the Purrely Happiness. And honestly, I've been seeing a lot of people start to run the X Purrely Happiness, which is a rank 7 Purrely Happiness. And honestly, like, that shit kills quickly. I'm almost considering running it. Honestly, I think it's maybe worth running in a best of 1 format. Is just really good at closing out games. So this deck kind of has it all. If there's one weakness I can give it, is that sometimes, you know, like if you're good at out resourcing your opponent when you're playing against Purrely, they can kind of struggle to get in because they do need a good amount of cards in hand to really get their plays going. So if you know where to interrupt, you can kind of leave them not doing much of anything. Also, you can chain cards even if they're kind of like irrelevant. If you can chain cards to their quick play spell activation so that they can't attach their quick play spells to their plump or something like that, it's going to stop them from playing and getting to their Noir, which makes it kind of hard for them to set up much of a threat. But it's a really solid deck and definitely tier 1 material. This one here, I don't know if people will agree with this, but I feel like it kind of has to be. It's Naturia Runick. So one of the best things going for Naturia Runick is obviously setting up the Naturia Beast on turn 1 is kind of invincible if you're playing against Purrely. It's really hard for Purrely to crack a Naturia Beast. It's just an insane card against Purrely, right? Other than that, against other matchups, Naturia Beast is not necessarily as crazy. But the thing is that Naturia Runick doesn't have a bad matchup per se. It pretty much always goes even or wins the matchup in any matchup pretty much in the game, at least in the higher ranks of the ladder. So it just has a really good time. You can pretty much adapt to any situation. It's one of those decks where it feels like almost any game is kind of winnable. Obviously, if you're going second and your opponent set up a Naturia Beast, then probably not. But for the most part, it's just a deck that has a lot of tools and it's incredibly versatile. Next up, let's do... Okay, this one is actually weird. This one, I think a lot of people might disagree with me, so I'll just kind of have to explain it. But I genuinely believe, considering I've been playing in Master Rank with a bunch of decks, trying a bunch of different strategies, and seeing a lot of what's being represented in Master Rank all the way up around Master 2, where I've been dabbling a lot recently, I think Mathmech is tier 1 right now. And it's at the bottom of tier 1 for sure. It's not top, high tier 1. But I don't see how it wouldn't be tier 1. And here's the thing. This video is going to be weird because there's going to be a lot of tier 1 decks in this video. And I don't know if people are going to disagree with me too much on this, but I just think there's too many really good decks in the game. I don't think it really would make sense to kind of limit it. Mathmech is crazy because of its non-targeting removal, making it really good against Purrely, because Purrely, once they set up that stray, it can be kind of hard to interrupt Purrely because if you can't target their special summoned Purrelys, right? So that makes it very difficult, but Mathmech can actually deal with that pretty easily with the Laplation, and Mathmech obviously is just a machine at OTKing, really easy to go for game with Mathmech. It's just a really crazy deck all around. You have a lot of space for hand traps, a lot more space than most decks. Circular's at 3. Circular is just a house of a card, absolutely broken, as everyone should know. And also, I know they kind of went down because Bestials had went up in popularity in recent formats, but this format, the only really popular deck that's running Bestials is Dragon Link, And from my experience in ladder, I don't see Dragon Link that much, even though I do think, and I mean, this is kind of spoilers, but we'll put it on the list soon enough. I do think Dragon Link is also a tier 1 strategy, but for the most part, you don't see bestials that much really in this format. Your Sigma is mostly going to be going through unless your opponent has called by and you're going second. So yeah, Mathmech is just like honestly in a really solid place right now, mostly because people are not really running bestials that much. Even in Naturia Runick, I see a lot of people not running bestials anymore. I still run bestials in my Naturia Runick strategy. A lot of people are using the Naturia Runick list from Joshua Schmidt that he used in that like Master Duel World Tournament thing. So like that's totally understandable. Me personally, I just got used to playing with the bestials. But yeah, for the most part, not that many bestials in the format, and so Mathmech is kind of doing its thing, and it's doing really good. Next up here, let's stop like you know, just doing all the tier 1s here. Let's talk about Dinos. I think Dinos right now with that strategy I showed off recently is still rogue. I mean, it's a rogue deck. It's Dinos, you know. I mean, sure, I do think the video I made recently about Dinos, kind of showcasing that new like synchro line using Colosylat is the best way to play Dinos in the current format. I do genuinely believe that, but it's still Dinos. They can brick, you know. You can get some hands where you're like, oh my god, I gotta set a baby and pass, and it just happens. That's just the way Dinos are, you know. So that hasn't changed, and my list doesn't make that never happen. It just makes the deck a slightly more consistent and makes the combo a bit more free flowing, where like you can play through a bit more interruption in different ways, but still it's just a rogue deck. It's a really good rogue deck, and I genuinely believe, as always with these videos, that pretty much every deck on this list is going to be able to make it to Master 1, and Dinos is no exception. I'm very confident that you can make it to Master 1 with Dinos right now. It's just definitely going to be like an uphill battle, right? Next up, let's do a deck that I don't think is tier 1 anymore because of the hits to their consistency and just the fact that it doesn't seem that overwhelming currently. Not to say it's bad, I just don't think it's necessarily tier 1. And this is specifically Sprite Runick. I'm going to be putting a couple of Sprite variants in this video. I think Sprite Runick is no longer tier 1, and it's really hard to like gauge for me. But the thing is just, man, when I play against Sprite, oftentimes I'm kind of reassured. There's still like nothing that you can sleep on. Like the difference between a tier 1 deck and a tier 2 deck in my mind for this format is not that big of a difference, because there's just too many good decks in the format right now. You can spam summons all you want. You can set up a couple of negates. You know, the turn 1 boards are just as good as they ever were. If you're running a dedicated going second build, it's even better right now, just because people are scared of Mikanko, so they might just pass when you pick second. But overall, I still think just Sprite is not quite as scary as it has been in recent formats, thanks to the hits of their consistency and stuff like that. Oftentimes your opponent has to rely on their extra deck monsters, and when they do, when you interrupt them, they can actually be kind of scuffed and make some really scuffed Sprite plays just because they didn't have access to their jet or their blue or stuff like that, you know. So you know, I'm not saying Sprite is suddenly bad. I genuinely think tier 2 and tier 1 is super close this format. And next up, let's do a deck that I think actually kind of convinced me of this, and that's Ninjas. Now Ninjas right now, I don't think they're any better than Rogue. Ninja do have some consistency issues sometimes. Like sometimes they'll draw like double Geo, which is really rough because you want your Geos in your deck to be able to summon them off of the maze end to flip 2 monsters face down. Ninja is not the best deck in Master Duel, but I do genuinely believe that you can get to Master 1 with this deck. It is still a very strong deck, and it's definitely nothing to sleep on. Sprite specifically really struggles against Ninja, actually. Like when I was playing Ninja, because I played a lot of Ninja ever since it came out, I've been practicing the deck a ton. And don't sleep on this deck, because it is going to get a lot better once the cash format comes out, because this deck has a really good matchup against Kashtira in particular, but against Sprite as well. I noticed that if I'm going first, usually Sprite players are losing. Even just on maze and pass, you can really do a lot against Sprite. It's kind of tough for Sprite to play when you can just flip 2 of their level 2 monsters face down, because that means like even if they normal summon a Nimble Beaver, you still get to flip both of their level 2s face down. Then they need a starter in hand. If they don't have the starter, they're pretty much screwed. Sometimes if they're playing the Runick variant, they might get to summon a Hugin and extend from there, but you're still seeing some scuffed plays at that point. So I've had a really good experience playing Ninjas in this format. I got to like middle of Master 2 with it, and I kind of struggled to get to Master 1 with the deck, but I did perform quite well in Master rank with Ninjas, so I definitely don't think you can sleep on them. I think they're actually really solid, but I can't really put them anywhere above Rogue right now, at least. I do think they're going to be slightly better than Rogue once once the Cash support comes out, just because of their good matchup against Kashtira in particular. Next up, let's do an interesting one here. I would say let's do Punk. And Punk, there's a lot of different variants of Punk right now. I definitely think Punk is like up here in tier 2. It's an insane deck right now. Punk didn't really lose much of anything. It's still a really solid deck. You still have the Chaos Ruler, so you can still do those crazy lines. A lot of people are running tier cards in their Punk list, which is also really scary. Running Punk Bestial is also terrifying. There's just a lot of really good stuff with Punk right now. Not to mention, Punk Kashtira is really crazy. Punk Kashtira is just the best way to play Kashtira in the game right now. It's an easy access to some nice level 10 synchros like Baron de Fleur, while also getting to do some nice Kashtira plays. And Kashtira monsters are nothing to scoff at. I'm not going to give Kashtira their own category on here because I think as a pure deck, Kashtira is kind of copium right now. It's going to be crazy once the support comes out, but for now I don't think it's very impressive. There's nothing really crazy to say about this deck. It's just a super consistent synchro spam deck. It sets up some negates, it sets up some bounces and stuff like that. It's got a good matchup spread, good consistency. It's just a strong, solid deck. Definitely Master 1 worthy. You can absolutely get to Master 1 with this deck. Okay, now here's a deck that I think is looking a bit better than it used to. And I think that's mostly due in part to the popularity of Purrely and Dragon Link. And that is Swordsoul, which I think is probably like in ladder format tier 2. By the way, I did forget to mention this at the start of the video, but my tier lists are always focused on ranked format, the ladder format of Master Duel. So I'm not talking about tournaments here. I'm only talking about performance in ladder. And yeah, I really do think Swordsoul right now is in a really good spot. I mean, Protoss in the current format is really crazy. It's really solid. There's a ton of decks summoning a bunch of dark monsters. Dragon Link is pretty popular right now, and obviously if you Protoss Dragon Link, you just kind of win the game for free. If you Protoss Purrely, that means they can't special out the Purrely, which does hurt them tremendously. They also cannot summon Noir, which is really rough for them. So you can hurt Purrely a lot with the Protoss. Not to mention that Swordsoul is as good as it's ever been when it comes to like setting up interruptions, negates, running a bunch of hand traps, always drawing the out, always drawing the proper hand trap against me specifically. So I'm going to give it a tier 2. Moving on. Another massive tier 2, and I'm inclined to put this almost at top of tier 2. I think I'm still going to put it under Sprite. I do think Sprite Runick is the best tier 2 deck because I'm almost inclined to put it here, you know. I'm going to put Mikanko right under Sprite. I think Mikanko is absolutely insane this format. Going second in general is just really good, and summoning a Lava Golem and just summoning a bunch of Mikankos, it's really hard to counter. Not a lot of decks can counter this stuff, and you need to be prepared for it. It's really hard to be prepared for sometimes, and it's such a unique strategy, and in a best of one format, it's just really hard to be prepared for it, especially when you win the coin flip and you choose to go first, so you have no idea that your opponent is playing Mikanko. You'll just like do your regular plays, then next turn you get Lava Golem, they'll summon out their Hooli, and then they'll be protected from targeting, and once they're protected from targeting, they can do pretty much whatever they want because you didn't set up any non-targeting removal, because you didn't know you were playing against Mikanko. So I really genuinely think this deck is amazing, and it's almost a free ride to Master 1 if you just want to play Mikanko. I feel like you'll get to Master 1 in no time. Next up here, let's do Trap Tricks. I think Trap Tricks is solidly in tier 3. I think it's definitely a better than Rogue type of deck, but it's still Trap Tricks. It's still not the best thing ever. Doesn't have the most impressive plays. Yeah, it's just good. It's a good deck. So I'm going to put it in tier 3. I don't have much to say about Trap Tricks. I don't really like talking about Trap Tricks either, so we're going to just move on. All right, might as well start filling out our tier 1 here because tier 1 is kind of what the whole meta revolves around. I already talked about this earlier, but obviously Dragon Link is tier 1. I genuinely believe Dragon Link is just the best deck in the game. So good at going second because it can play through so much interruption. Going first, like, again, plays through a bunch of hand traps, no problem. Sets up insane boards, amazing interruptions. It's just a great deck. It got a bit of extra support. Now it has that black metal dragon line. Next up, let's do Scareclaw Adventure. Now, there is someone in my Discord called Half Ounce Hero who is adamant that Scareclaw Adventure is, you know, high tier 2, bordering on tier 1. Now, I'm going to say I think it's probably more like a tier 3 deck, but it is a very solid deck. The Scareclaw Tryhard is just really hard to out for Purrely in particular, and it's just a really good card. It's not the best card against every single deck. Like Dragon Link doesn't care very much about Tryhard, but a lot of decks do care about Tryhard, and Purrely in particular really struggles at outing it. Like can barely out the Tryhard at all, which definitely gives it an edge. I don't think it has enough good matchups to be up here. I mean, it's not to say you can't get to Master 1 with it. I do think you can get to Master 1 with it. It is a good deck. I really can't see it being tier 2 or tier 1 yet. I need to be convinced. I need to see it more in ladder. I almost never see it. When I see it, it can do some good stuff, but genuinely, I really don't think it's that good. But shout out Half Ounce Hero, and I do agree this deck is actually really solid this format. Okay, now, back to my hot takes. Back to the takes that will get me canceled, ridiculed online in my comment section. We're looking at Labyrinth here. Now, I really think Labyrinth is tier 1. I really think Labyrinth is tier 1. In fact, I think it's better than Mathmech. Yeah, this is a weird one. Okay, so Labyrinth, the reason I think it's tier 1 is because it's non-targeting removal, makes it really good against Purrely. Setting 5 cards, going second against Dragon Link is a lot better than most going second plays that most decks have against Dragon Link. Dragon Link Interruption doesn't do that much to stop a player that's going to be just setting 4 or 5 cards and passing. So when you're going second with a deck like Labyrinth, you're not actually feeling that bad, even though your deck prefers to go first. Just going second, setting all your traps, you still pretty much get to play Labyrinth regardless. So honestly, like, I think Labyrinth is just in a really, really good spot. It can struggle against Naturia Runick because Naturia Runick can, you know, banish all their shit and set up a Barkion, and Barkion is just going to negate every trap ever. But that's kind of a niche scenario, and not to mention the big bodies that Labyrinth puts on the field make it kind of hard to contend when you're playing Naturia Runick, because you want to pull out your big synchros like Cheng Ying to be able to beat over the big monsters in Labyrinth. But by doing that, oftentimes you can't get to your Barkion, or, you know, like you'll just kind of scuff your plays to be able to put up a big enough body to deal with their shit. And also, they also have Chaos Angel now, and Chaos Angel is actually like a hell of a card. It's just a really strong addition to their tool set. I really don't see how Labyrinth is not tier 1, but I know people will be looking at this list and they'll see Sprite here, and they'll see Labyrinth here, and they'll see Mathmech here, and they're gonna cancel me. But you know, I'm just speaking from my experience in the ladder, seeing a lot of Labyrinth all the way throughout Master Rank. In Master 2 especially, I saw a ton of Labyrinth, and it doesn't surprise me. This deck is really, really good right now. Going first, it's really hard to beat for almost any deck. I think like it pretty much claps up every single deck here if it goes first. And then going second, it really depends, but it's not that bad. Like you'd think for a set 5, set 4 pass deck that you'd have like a really bad time going second, but it doesn't have that bad of a time going second, honestly. So I don't know, just don't sleep on Labyrinth. Next up, let's do Blackwings. I think Blackwings is like comfortably at rogue rank. I mean, it's Blackwings, right? Like it's solid. It does what it does. It's not the best, and it's not the worst. It's Blackwings. Next up, let's do Sprite Tri Brigade, and I think Sprite Tri Brigade is probably going to be like bottom of tier 2. I think it's better than tier 3. It's definitely not the best version of Sprite that you can play, but it does have some things going for it that are really scary, like the ability to summon a beast from your graveyard with Elf to re-trigger the Sure Egg during your opponent's turn. It's really scary. That means you get to banish more than once. It's really good at going second, really good at going first, but it is the most complicated version of Sprite to play, and you can end up locking yourself out of plays if you don't know what you're doing. So this deck definitely requires a really skilled pilot. I personally don't really like playing this deck because I just don't like thinking about Tri Brigade locks while I'm playing Sprite cards. Like, I just don't like thinking about it. Maybe try out Sprite Tri Brigade. It's really solid. All right, next up here, let's do Branded Despia. Now, Branded Despia, I'll tell you right now, I don't have Tier Limits in this list. We're not even putting Tier Limits in the list because pure Tier Limits is dead. It's not a real deck. You know, you'll see Tier Limits played in Punk. You'll see Tier Limits played a little bit in Despia, but pure Tier Limits, not a very real deck anymore. But Despia is the one place where Tier Limits, I would say, are at their best. They can be used to summon a Grapha in Despia, giving Despia an Omni Negate if you want to do that. But I don't think that's really even the most popular way to play Despia. Most popular way to play Despia is the same way you have been playing it. And honestly, even with Branded Fusion at 1, It's still quite consistent. However, I don't think it's really doing enough compared to the other decks in the format to really be put up here. I think it's going to be the top of tier 3. It's still a very, very strong deck with a really good toolkit, good consistency, despite the fact that we only have one branded fusion, and it can recur the branded fusion thanks to Grand Guignol, thanks to Cartesia. Fusion deployment is crazy. Like, this deck has a lot of consistency, but it's not really as overwhelming as a lot of these dudes up here, you know. Purrely is crazy. Dragon Link is insane. Branded Despia, you know, when you face them, you're like, okay, I'm about to have a fair duel. You know, I'm about to have a fair game. You know, that's why I don't really feel like I can put them like much higher than this. But like, I definitely think you can get to Master 1 with Branded Despia, no question. And on the topic of tier 3 decks, I think Flandere's, unfortunately, is still a very present deck. You still see it. And obviously, it's not the most impressive thing ever. Very interruptible, very easy to interrupt. A lot of people are running Duel now, which really hurts Flandere's. So I'm going to be putting it at the bottom of tier 3 because I'm still seeing it all the way up to Master 2 in the last quarter of 2023, which it must mean something. Look, I don't like Flandere's. I still don't like them. Even after all the hits they took, I just don't like them, okay? I have a vendetta against this deck, but I can't lie. It's still getting some results in ladder. It's still pretty good in ladder. And that doesn't surprise me because in a best of 1 format, you know, if you're not expecting Flandere's and you're going second and Flandere's does all their like crazy shenanigans, you're really in trouble. The one thing is Flandere's going second is not very good. They're kind of shitty at going second. They can't even run kaijus. So, yeah. I don't think it goes any higher than bottom of tier 3. And I'm even inclined to put it in Rogue, honestly. Yeah, I'm going to do that. Okay, next up, let's do heroes. Heroes are the Rogue Kings. They're always the Rogue Kings. They're always going to be the Rogue Kings. So I'm going to put the heroes in Rogue because that's what they do. They're the Rogue deck. They're good, though. They're really good. Let's do Marincess. I think Marincess is a little bit underrated, honestly. I think Marincess is kind of crazy. I actually think Marincess is better than Branded Despia. Yeah, I think Marincess is better than Branded Despia. This deck is just like really good. It's kind of like a marginally less good Mathmech deck. Like, it has a very similar playstyle, but that trap card that they search is just so broken. And then like their recursion is crazy. Going second, they can kill super easy. And if they're setting up and then you don't make it through turn 2, on turn 3, they have insane recursion from the graveyard. They'll flood the field with monsters. They'll make Zealantis and they water lock themselves. So they like banish your whole field and then you don't even get your cards back because they can't special summon monsters that are not water. So yeah, like this deck is so insane still. Like Marincess is super slept on right now. It's a really, really solid deck in my opinion. Next up, we'll do Valence. I think Valence is also kind of slept on. I think Valence is just really good. I'm going to put it like bottom of tier 2. Genuinely think this is like bottom of tier 2. What they do basically is they're a combo deck that can play through a good amount of interruption, and they'll set up a Fossil Dyna as well as like some stuff that'll stop you from getting over that Fossil Dyna and some negates. And honestly, in this format, if you set that up, that's enough. Going second, their extra deck monsters are actually really good at being going second monsters, but I will say like Valence does struggle a bit more at going second. Normally, if I'm going first and I'm playing against a Valent player, it doesn't take too long to stop them from really doing what they want to do. So it seems like they are kind of reliant on going first for the most part. Not that they can't go second, they definitely can, but I would say that stops them from going like up here. That's why I would put them at the bottom of tier 2. They still have plays going second, don't get me wrong. They're just not quite as good at going second as most of these decks over here, you know? And let's do Rikka and Avalon. I think Rikka and Avalon's probably like right here, like yeah, probably above Swordsoul. Yeah, Rikka and Avalon, just a really solid combo deck. You know, there's really nothing else to say there. It's a good combo deck. Also, it tributes for cost. So technically, I think if you have Con on the field, you can tribute the Purrely Noir. Although, like, even if you can, your odds of having Con on the field while Noir is there are pretty low. But, you know, it's a good deck. It's just a good combo deck. Sets up insane interruptions. And it makes your opponent scoop before you even finish your combo because your combo is way too long. And it's honestly, like, it's unwatchable. I am not watching your combo. I'm out of here, right? So, yeah, definitely just a crazy deck. Like, it's always been crazy. It's always, like, high up here. Every format, pretty much. And this format's no exception. So just a really good deck. Finally here, for higher Runick, for higher Sprite Runick, for higher Sprite, whatever. for hire, I don't think I even need to go in depth about this. The for hire variant and the other variants, the Sprite Runick, I think they're about in the same category. You know, they're both like really solid decks. I think, you know, teetering on tier 1, but they don't feel quite as overwhelming as the decks up here. And I know that sounds crazy because I have Mathmech up here, but I don't know, man. Mathmech is just crazy right now. It's super scary. Whatever deck you're playing here, if Mathmech is going first and they get to set up their shit, like, you're in trouble. It's really tough to play through. So I don't know. The non-targeting removal is just too crazy. And that's going to do it for this tier list video. Listen, guys, if you don't like it, if you think I'm crazy, if you think this list is an L, make sure to write MDCL in the comments. And if you think this is a W, maybe you could write W in the comments. Do whatever you want, but make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, because that helps me tremendously and it takes no effort whatsoever. You just hit the button, you know? Anyway, guys, I really appreciate you. Thank you for sticking around, if you stuck around. I mean, shout out to the dude that just skipped to the end here. This is the list. Go write your comment. Go be angry. Go be mad. It's a tough format to crack. What can I say? Anyway, guys, that's it for me. All right. Peace.